Welcome. This is the channel Ms.Carmina Reads. This is Ms.Carmina Reads Live. I am Ms.Carmina. Today we're going to continue reading from Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. This is going to be finishing up the chapter called Forging the Self, Disenchanting the World. And I will pick up from the beginning, from the top of the page where we left off, all right? And hopefully we'll finish this chapter today. And tomorrow we can commence the next section. Excuse me. I would like to start off by saying, hi, everybody is welcome here. Whether you've been here before or not, I invite you to give me a thumbs up, to hype this video, or support me in any way which is possible to you. If you want to see me again, go ahead and subscribe, and let's get started. As soon as we first used a tool, we began to act as a subject vis-a-vis an object. All the epochal advances in human evolution, bipedalism and upright posture, the larger and more complex brain, the making of tools, the control of fire, the development of hunting and gathering societies, the division of labor, the domestication of plants and animals, the formation of settled communities, and then large urban centers, the increasingly complex and hierarchical social organization, the evolving capacities of linguistic, religious, and artistic symbolization, the emergence of the earliest forms of science and philosophy. All these both reflected and impelled new stages in the progressive differentiation of the human self from the encompassing world. A memorable image at the beginning of Kubrick's film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, captures one aspect of this larger coherence in the vector of the human epic. In the opening sequence entitled The Dawn of Man, a proto-human primate has just made the primordial discovery of using a tool for the first time, successfully employing a large bone as a weapon in a life and death struggle. In the ecstasy of that discovery, he hits the bone over and over again on a rock, on which it eventually shatters and, soaring high into the air, metamorphoses in slow motion into an orbiting space satellite at the turn of the 21st century. In that single montage, we see the entire Promethean trajectory, the alpha and the omega of the Promethean quest to liberate the human being from the bonds of nature through human intelligence and will, to ascend and transcend. Hold on. This calls for some highlighting. This is the entire Promethean trajectory, the alpha and the omega of the Promethean quest to liberate the human being from the bonds of nature through human intelligence and will, to ascend and transcend, to gain control over the larger matrix from which the human being was attempting to emerge. This quest climaxes in modernity, especially in modern science, where the dominant goal of knowledge is ever increasing prediction and control over an external natural world seen as radically other, mechanistic, impersonal, unconscious, the object of our powerful knowledge. From the time of Bacon and Descartes, Hobbes and Locke, and more pervasively in the aftermath of the Enlightenment, the modern understanding is gradually so transformed that the world is no longer seen as a locus of pre-given meanings and purposes, as had been true not only in the immemorial primal vision, but also for the ancient Greeks, medieval scholastics, and Renaissance humanists. With the full ascension of the modern mind, the world is no longer informed by numinous powers, gods and goddesses, archetypal ideas, or sacred ends. It no longer embodies a cosmic order of meanings and purposes with which the human self seeks to be aligned. Rather, the world is viewed as a neutral domain of contingent facts and potential means to our secular purposes. In Max Weber's famous term at the beginning of the 20th century, which developed Schiller's insight of a century earlier, the modern world is disenchanted and sober. It has been voided of any spiritual, symbolic, or expressive dimension that provides a cosmic order in which human existence finds its ground of meaning and purpose. Instead, the world is viewed entirely in terms of neutral meaning and purpose. Instead, the world is viewed entirely in terms of neutral facts, the detached rational understanding of which will give the human being an unprecedented capacity to calculate, control, and manipulate the world. Hi, Soccer and Satan. I am reading to share books with you all. I'm reading so we can read together. Yeah, and this is the book that I'm sharing right now, Cosmos and Psyche. So gather around, get comfortable, and read with us. Let me grab my paper. Yet, such a great shift in understanding also accomplishes something else of scarcely less importance for the modern self: disenchantment, the denial of intrinsic meaning and purpose. The denial of intrinsic meaning and purpose essentially objectifies the world and thereby denies subjectivity to the world. Objectification denies to the world a subject's capacity to intend, to signify intelligibly, to express its meaning, to embody and communicate humanly relevant purposes and values. To objectify the world is to remove from it all subjective categories, such as meaning and purpose, by perceiving these as projections of what we now regarded as the only true subjects. Purpose by perceiving these as projections of what are now regarded as the only true subjects, human beings. This, in turn, what are now regarded as the only true subjects, human beings. This, in turn, tremendously magnifies and empowers human subjectivity. The felt interior capacity of the human being to be self-defining, self-revising, self-determining, to be both outwardly world-shaping and inwardly consequential and autonomous. This is the world. It makes possible a new freedom from externally imposed meanings and orderings that had previously been seen as embedded in the cosmos and that had typically been upheld and enforced by traditional structures of cultural authority, whether religious, social, or political. Charles Taylor has well described the consequences of this deep shift for the modern self. And here quotes Charles Taylor, wherein he says, "One of the powerful attractions of this austere vision, long before it paid off in technology, lies in the fact that a disenchanted world is correlative to a self-defining subject, and that the winning through to a self-defining identity was accompanied by a sense of exhilaration and power, that the subject need no longer define his perfection or vice, his equilibrium or disharmony, in relation to an external order. With the forging of this modern subjectivity, there comes a new motion of freedom, and a newly central role attributed to freedom, which seems to have proved itself definitive and irreversible. Depriving the world of subjectivity, of its capacity for intentional significance by objectification and disenchantment, radically enhances the human self's sense of freedom and autonomous subjectivity, its underlying conviction that it can shape and determine its own existence. Simultaneously, disenchantment enhances the human being's capacity to view the natural world as primarily a context to be shaped and a resource to be exploited for human benefit. As the world loses its traditional structures of pre-given meaning, as these are successively seen through and deconstructed, the conditions of human existence, both outer and inner, become increasingly open to change and development, even more subject to human influence, innovation, and control. It was through just this extraordinary shift of vision that there developed an effective psychological and philosophical foundation for the rapid ascent of modern science, secular society, democratic individualism, and industrial civilization. The history of the human mind's movement from a state of participation mystique to a more fully differentiated mode of awareness is in many respects the history of the human mind itself, impelled by powerful human drive, by the powerful human drive to achieve ever greater autonomy relative to the conditions of existence. Virtually, the entire evolution of human consciousness has served this psychological and epistemological impulse to distinguish the human self from the world, subject from object, part from whole. The Promethean project seems to be intrinsic to the human condition, yet this project has been carried out most vigorously and brilliantly by the Western mind, above all by the modern mind, that avatar and apex of the Promethean progress. If we look again at the comparison in figure 2, which I will show you right now, between the primal experience of participation mystique and the modern experience of a subject-object dichotomy, we can readily see what has happened in the process of moving from the world view depicted on the left to that depicted on the right. In the long evolution from primal to modern consciousness, there has taken place a complexly intertwined and interpenetrating two-sided process. On the one hand, a gradual differentiation of the self from the world, of the human being from nature, of the individual from the encompassing matrix of being. On the other hand, the gradual disenchantment of the world, producing a radical relocation of the ground of meaning and conscious intelligence from the world as a whole to the human self alone. What once pervaded the world as anima mundi is now seen as the exclusive property of human consciousness. The modern human self has essentially absorbed all meaning and purpose into its own interior being, emptying the primal cosmos of what once constituted its essential nature. And here is the graphic it was speaking about, figure 2, here, where we see primal worldview, the world, the self in the center, and here the modern worldview, the world, and the self in the center. The difference being that in the primal worldview, the separation between the world and the self is a dotted line, wherein the modern worldview, the separation between the world and the self is a solid line, right? So let us continue. But we understand this evolutionary process if we consider it only in the generally secular terms so far discussed. The modern differentiation of the autonomous human self and the disenchantment of the empirical cosmos were also profoundly influenced and even impelled by the historical evolution of religion, again particularly in the Western context, ancient, medieval, and early modern. From its beginnings, the Western self was informed by the momentous disclosure of humanity's special relationship to a transcendent divine reality. A monotheistic supreme being who was both the creator of the world and the ultimate locus of meaning and value. Quote, man was made in the image of God, unquote. Thus, God's absolute uniqueness, separation, and superiority with respect to the mundane world of mortal fortitude and unredeemed nature deeply strengthened the human being's sense of uniqueness, separation, and superiority with respect to the rest of nature and to the created universe. Oh, thank you for sending me a star. That was so sweet. Thank you so much. Modifying our diagram accordingly, we can recognize the crucial intervening stage in the evolution from the primal worldview to the modern one, provided by this immense religious development. With the revelation of the transcendent divine being as the ultimate ground of meaning and value, supraordinate to and separate from the empirical world of nature, combined with the human being's unique association with that transcendent divinity, an enormous intellectual and psychological step is taken in the separative elevation of the human from a universe gradually voided of intrinsic meaning. In the monotheistic revelation, a self-subsistent divine subject created the world as object, within which the special human subject and its divinely ordained history unfolds, as the diagram in Figure 3 suggests, and as Descartes' carefully arguments for the existence of God at the birth of modern philosophy affirm. What eventually becomes the modern self receives its unique ontological status from its privileged association with a transcendent divine reality that stands above an empirical cosmos that has been increasingly emptied of all inherent significance and valued apart from the human. Yes, I had been thinking about this in the past, actually. And this is organizing my thoughts much better. This epochal transformation of the triadic relationship between divinity, humanity, and the world, divinity, humanity, and the world, was already set in motion with the emergence of the great world religions and philosophies of transcendence during the period of the first millennium BCE, named by Karl Jaspers named by Karl Jaspers the Axial Age. The differentiation between self, world, and God was given special force and new definition with the unfolding of the biblical tradition from the later Hebrew prophets through early Christianity to Saint Augustine and the medieval era. It was decisively forwarded and, in a sense, absolutized by the Reformation's militant desacralizing of the world in service of the human being's exclusive allegiance to the sovereign majesty of the Creator. Finally, in the wake of the scientific revolution and enlightenment, this privileged position of the human vis-a-vis the rest of creation was assumed and expanded in entirely secular terms. Here too, partially as a result of the forces set in motion by the Western religious legacy, as the modern self progressed in its unprecedented development of autonomy and self-definition. Okay. A host of significant implications and expectations, ambiguities, and nuances could be usefully discussed concerning this long and complex historical development. And let me show you the graphic of figure 3 before I continue reading and we finish off this section. This is figure 3, where here we see the transcendent divine up here, where the arrows pointing here and pointing here as well, where the big circle is the world, and where the small circle is the self, and every single line is a filled line, a solid line. Every single line is solid, right? Western religious worldview. The transcendent divine, the world, and the self, with a double arrow pointing both here and here. All right? So now I'll continue. But speaking very broadly, we may say here that as the human self, guided by its evolving cultural, religious, and philosophical and evolving cultural, religious, philosophical, and scientific civilizations, has gained increasingly substantiality and distinction with respect to the world, that self has increasingly appropriated all the intelligence and soul, meaning and purpose it previously perceived in the world, so that it eventually locates these realities exclusively within itself. Conversely, as the human being has appropriated all the intelligence and soul, meaning and purpose it previously perceived in the world, it has gained more and more substantiality and distinction with respect to the world, accompanied by the ever greater autonomy, as those meanings and purposes are seen as ever more malleable to human will and intelligence. The two processes, constellating the self and appropriating the anima mundi, have been mutually supportive and reinforcing, but their joint consequence has been to gradually empty the external world of all intrinsic meaning and purpose. By the late modern period, the cosmos has metamorphosed into a mindless, soulless vacuum within which the human being is incongruently self-aware. The anima mundi has dissolved and disappeared, and all psychological and spiritual qualities are now located exclusively in the human mind and psyche. It appears that this evolutionary trade-off has fostered the emergence of a centered, autonomous self, one decisively set off from yet dynamically engaged with the encompassing world, a world that in turn has been voided of all those qualities with which the human being is uniquely identified: the forging of the self and the disenchantment of the world, the differentiation of human and the appropriation of meaning, are all aspects of the same development. In effect, to sum up a very complex process, the achievement of human autonomy has been paid for by the experience of human alienation. How precious the former, how painful the latter. What may be viewed as the fundamental epistemological strategy of the evolving human mind, the systematic separation of subject from object, one carried forth to its fullest extent by the modern mind, has proved to be powerfully effective and indeed liberating. Yet, many of that strategy's long-term consequences have also proved to be highly problematic. Thank you for reading with me, you all. I believe I have about 20 more minutes left. And because this book is so long, I will begin the next chapter. And at the next opportunity, I know today is Friday, and I'm not sure I'm gonna have a lot of time once I get home. Or we might have to finish this chapter on Monday, or at least continue it on Monday. But anyhow, I will read it now. I will commence to read it now. And it is called The Cosmological Situation Today. All right? So, in the course of the past century, the modern worldview has been both its greatest ascendancy and its unexpected breakdown. Every field and discipline, from philosophy, anthropology, and linguistics to physics, ecology, and medicine, has brought forth new data and new perspectives that have challenged long-established assumptions and strategies of the modern mind. This challenge has been considerably magnified and made more urgent by the multitude of concrete consequences produced by those assumptions and strategies, many of them problematic. As of the first decade of the new millennium, almost every defining attitude of the modern worldview has been critically reassessed and deconstructed, though often not relinquished. Even one failure to do so is costly. The result in our own postmodern time has been a state of extraordinary intellectual ferment and fragmentation, fluidity and uncertainty. Ours is an age between worldviews, creative yet disoriented, and a transitional era when the old cultural vision no longer holds, and the new has not yet constellated. Yet we are not without signs of what the new might look like. Recently, there have been emerging from the deconstructive flux of the postmodern mind the tentative outlines of new understanding of reality. Hold on, I want to highlight all of this. The tentative outline of a new understanding of reality. One very different from the conventional modern view. Impelled by developments in many fields, this shift in intellectual vision has encompassed a wide range of ideas and principles, among which can be identified a few common themes. Perhaps the most conspicuous and pervasive of these can be summed up as a deeper appreciation of both the multidimensional complexity of reality and the plurality of perspectives necessary to approach it. Closely related to this new appreciation as both cause and effect is a critical reappraisal of the epistemological limits and pragmatic consequences of the conventional scientific approach to knowledge. This reappraisal includes a more acute sensitivity to the ways in which subject and object are mutually implicated in the act of knowing, a revised understanding of the relationship of whole and part in all phenomena, a new grasp of complex interdependence and subtle order in living systems, and an acknowledgement of the inadequacy of reductionist, mechanistic, and objectivized concepts of nature. Could it be that we should go back to the past and revise it instead of discarding it? Other major characteristics of this emerging intellectual vision include a deeper understanding of the pivotal role of the imagination in mediating all human experience and knowledge, an increasing awareness of the depth, power, and complexity of the unconscious, and a more sophisticated analysis of the nature of symbolic, metaphoric, and archetypal meaning in human life. Behind many of these themes can be seen a rejection of all literalistic and univocal interpretations of reality, of the tendency, as Robert B. Bila has put it, to identify one conception of reality with reality itself. Equally fundamental to this shift is a growing recognition of the need for and desirability of a radical opening of the mainstream Western intellectual and cultural tradition to the rich multiplicity of other traditions and perspectives that have evolved both within the West and in other cultures. Yet this emphatic embrace of pluralism has been balanced by, and to a great extent been in the service of, a profound impulse for reintegration and widely felt desire to overcome the fragmentation and alienation of the late modern mind. Yes. Underlying the variety of expressions, the most distinctive trait of this new vision has been its concern with the philosophical and psychological reconciliation of numerous long-standing schisms between human being and nature, self and world, spirit and matter, mind and body, conscious and unconscious, personal and transpersonal, secular and sacred, intellect and soul, science and the humanities, science and religion. For some time, this emerging consensus of convictions and aspirations has seemed to me, as to many others, the most interesting and hopeful intellectual development of our age, and perhaps the one most likely to produce a viable successor. The most interesting and hopeful intellectual development of our age, and perhaps the most likely to produce a viable successor to the rapidly deteriorating modern worldview. Yet, for its beginning, this new vision or paradigm has confronted a seemingly unsurmountable problem. The present world situation could hardly be more ripe for a major paradigm shift, and should, and very probably will, be based on principles resembling those just cited. But to succeed in becoming a broad-based cultural vision, or even to achieve its own implicit program in psychological and intellectual integration, this new outlook has been lacking one essential element, the sine qua non of any genuinely comprehensive, internally consistent worldview, a coherent cosmology. A coherent cosmology, of course. In retrospect, it is evident that the fundamental intellectual turning point of Western civilization was the Copernican revolution. Understood in its largest sense, nothing so effectively bestowed confidence in the supreme power of human reason, nothing so emphatically and comprehensively affirmed the superiority of the modern Western mind over all others, all other worldviews, all other areas, all other cultures, all other modes of cognition. Nothing emancipated the modern self from a cosmos of established pre-given meanings more profoundly or more dramatically. It is impossible to think of the modern mind without the Copernican revolution. Thank you. Thank you, Ace. I appreciate that. Still got time. Yet, the luminosity of that great revolution has cast an extraordinary shadow. The radical displacement of the Earth and humanity from an absolute cosmic center, the stunning transference of the apparent cosmic order from the observed to the observer, and the eventual pervasive disenchantment of the material universe were all paradigmatic for the modern mind. And these have now come to epitomize humankind's underlying sense of disorientation and alienation, with the heavens no longer a separate divine realm, and with the earth no longer embedded in a circumscribed celestial order of planetary spheres and powers. Humanity was simultaneously liberated from and thrust out of the ancient medieval cosmic womb. The essential nature of reality underwent an immense shift for the Western mind, which now engaged a world possessed of entirely new dimensions, structure, and existential implications. Right. Excuse me while I take a water break. For all the exalted numinosity of the Copernican birth, the new universe that eventually emerged into the light of common day was a spiritually empty vastness, impersonal, neutral, indifferent to human concerns, governed by random processes devoid of purpose or meaning. At a deep level, human consciousness was thereby radically estranged and decentered. Human consciousness was thereby radically estranged and decentered. It no longer experienced itself as an essential expression and focus of an intrinsically meaningful universe. Quote, before the Copernican revolution, unquote, wrote Bertrand Russell, quote, it was natural to suppose that God's purposes were specially concerned with the earth. But now this has become an unplausible hypothesis, unquote. Mankind must instead be regarded as a curious accident. The Copernican revolution was the modern mind's prototypical act of deconstruction, bringing both a birth and a death. It was the primordial cataclysm of the modern age, a stupendous event which destroyed an entire world and constituted a new one. Not only the subsequent evolution of modern cosmology from Newton and Laplace to Epstein and Hubble, but virtually the entire modern intellectual trajectory has sustained and magnified the primary Copernican insight. Descartes, Locke, Hume, Kant, Schopenhauer, Darwin, Marx, Nietzsche, Weber, Freud, Wittgenstein, Russell, Heidegger, Sartre, Camus, from 17th century rationalism and empiricism to 20th century existentialism and astrophysics, human consciousness has found itself progressively emancipated emancipated, yet also progressively relativized and unrooted, inwardly isolated from the spiritually opaque world it seeks to comprehend. The soul knows no home in the modern cosmos. The status of the human being in its cosmic setting is fundamentally problematic. Solitary, accidental, ephemeral, inexplicable. The proud uniqueness and autonomy of man have come at a high price. He is an insignificant speck cast adrift in a vast, purposeless cosmos, a stranger in a strange land. Self-reflective human consciousness finds no foundation for itself in the empirical world. Inner and outer psyche and cosmos are radically discontinuous, mutually incoherent. As Steven Weinberg famously summarized the modern cosmology, quote, "The more the universe seems incomprehensible, the more it also seems pointless," unquote. With the encompassing cosmos indifferent to human meaning, with all significance deriving ultimately from the decentered and accidental human subject, a meaningful world can never be more than a courageous human projection. Thus did the Copernican revolution establish the essential matrix for the modern worldview in all its disenchanting ramifications. The most celebrated of human intellectual achievements, it remains the watershed of human alienation, the epochal symbol of humanity's cosmic estrangement. Indeed. Well, here we face the crux of our present predicament, for it is this post-Copernican cosmological context that continues to frame the current effort to forge a new paradigm of reality, yet that context, utterly at variance with the deep transformations now being urged, thereby confounds them. Although many of the post-Copernican ramifications, Cartesian, Kantian, Darwinian, Freudian, have been grappled with, criticized, and reconceived to one extent or another, the great starting point of the whole trajectory of the modern consciousness remains untouched. The cosmological metastructure that implicitly contained and precipitated all the rest is still solidly established to be beyond discussion. The physical sciences of the past 100 years have flung open wide the nature of reality, dissolving all the old absolutes. But the earth still moves, along with now everything else, in a postmodern explosion of centerless, free-floating flux. Newton has been transcended, but not Copernicus, who has rather been extended in every dimension. Goodness gracious, shall I continue reading? I think so. For all the notable strides made in deconstructing the modern mind and moving towards a new vision, whether in science, philosophy, or religion, nothing has come close to questioning the larger Copernican revolution itself. The modern mind's first principle and foundation, the very idea, is an inconceivable. The very idea is as inconceivable now as was the idea of a moving earth before the 1500. What most fundamental modern revolution, along with its deepest existential consequences, still prevails, subtly yet globally determining the character of the contemporary mind. The continuing implacable reality of a purposeless cosmos places an effective glass ceiling on all attempts to reconstruct or soften the various alienating past Copernican ramifications, from Descartes' subject-object dualism to Darwin's blind evolution. A straight line of disenchantment extends from astronomy and biology to philosophy and religion, as in Jacques Monod's well-known synopsis of the human condition in the latter 20th century, quote, "The ancient covenant is in pieces. Man knows at last that he is alone in the universe, in the universe's unfeeling immensity, out of which he emerged only by chance," unquote. And this time, from the cosmological perspective, the various movements now pressing for the creation of a more humanly meaningful and spiritual resonant world have been taking place in an atomistic void, the absence of some unprecedented development beyond the existential framework defined by the larger Copernican revolution. These less primordial and intellectual changes can never be more than brave interpretive exercises in an alien cosmic environment. No amount of revisioning philosophy or psychology, science or religion can forge a new worldview without a radical shift at the cosmological level. As it now stands, our cosmic context does not support the attempted transformation of human vision. No genuine synthesis seems possible. This enormous contradiction that invisibly encompasses the emerging paradigm is precisely what is preventing that paradigm from constituting a coherent and effective worldview. And in my humble opinion, the answer is in quantum physics. Good afternoon to you as well, but axe. But this time I do have to stop. I'll fold the page so I can start right where I left off. All right, thank you everybody for joining me in this read aloud video. We will continue reading The Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. The next chance I get to come on live. Not sure when it'll be. If not this weekend, if not later today, definitely on Monday. Well, hopefully definitely on Monday. I love you, readers and scholars. Thank you for joining me. Be safe. Take care. Come back again. Give me a like, subscribe. Thank you for all of your support.